Welcome to our Tuesday evening, September 1st, 2020, Chat with the Rabbi. We're excited to be here and welcome everybody and thank you. Go ahead, Rabbi.
It's great to be with you too. And I'm glad this is being recorded. I'm going to try to do it right so I don't have to do it over again next time. But let me share with you a couple of things. One is that this passage we're reading is called Ki Tavo. You might not like it too much, but it has the beginning of the income tax. If you're wondering why do you have to pay an income tax, it's right here. And it's kind of an interesting passage because what it says is when you enter the land that God is giving you, then you're going to take food from your field and the produce that you have and bring it to the priest. And then, of course, the priest takes some for himself. That's how religion got started. But also, they share it with the poor and the hungry. And they give 10%. So it was a flat tax. It was a 10% flat tax. They called it a tithe, which comes from the word tenth. Yeah. Tithing, what the church does, means a tenth. So you give 1/10 of what you got, and you give it back. The rationale for it is also interesting. It says when you enter the land that God is giving you, which means that in the United States, if you own property, it's yours. You don't share it with anybody. Nobody else is a co-owner. It's yours. You can do whatever you want with it. If you want to use it all for yourself, that's your business. The Torah doesn't quite see it that way. And it's similar to the Native Americans. The Native Americans didn't think you could actually own land either. They thought land belongs to the Great Spirit, and we're kind of like occupying it. It's a similar concept. So the land belongs to God. He gives it to us, but we hold it in trust. And since we're holding God's land in trust, we have to use some of it for a godly purpose. So charity isn't something that you do just because you feel so inclined, although it's nice if you do. It's actually a sacred obligation. So here it is in the beginning of our moral code in this passage. You bring 10% and you bring it in a basket. So of course I referred to this. This is the first time that they're talking about baskets or basketball. And then I talked about the basketball players and I think they're doing a great thing, boycotting and putting things on their jerseys and stuff like that. So you'll see that. But I wanted to share something with you that I was pretty excited about. And I was so excited, I even showed it to Francine, which I usually don't do. I showed it to Francine. I was thinking, if I can get a rise out of her, then probably other people think this is pretty cool. And she did almost raise one eyebrow. She was almost a little surprised about this. What I'm going to show you. I'm going to put it on a poster board, and I'm going to show it. I think for the high holidays, but it seems pretty cool to me. So I'm going to put it like this. I don't know if you can see it, but
back it up, Rabbi. Back it up. Okay, now let's
look at the first word. I didn't write it that clear, but it's
emet. It's emet.
And now it's aleph, mem, and taf, and it means truth. Now, something interesting about the word emet, my father pointed this out to me, is that aleph is the first letter of the alphabet. Taf is the last letter. So it begins with the first letter, it ends with the last letter, and mem is in the middle of the Hebrew alphabet. So the word for truth tells us that to find truth, you have to look at all sides. You can't just be narrow-minded and just like watch one TV station or just listen to one party or just hear one position. You have to take all sides. My father told me that. But I found out something else in the word emet. I have it written down underneath, but it's kind of hard to see, but I'll just share it with you. If you take the word emet, the first letter aleph is the first letter of the word emunah. Emunah means faith. It's related to the word amen. You say amen, it means so be it. Emunah is faith. Now the last letter is Torah, or tefillah, which means prayer. So you have faith in the beginning, and then the end result is it leads to prayer and Torah. But in the middle, you have the mem. Mem is the first letter in the words for science, which is mada. Mada is related to the word yodea, like mi, echad mi yodea, who knows one. Mada means knowledge or science, which means that you have faith and Torah, But right in the center of it, you need science and reason. Otherwise, you end up with emunah tefillah. If you have the aleph and the taf, the first and the last letter, but you leave out the mem, the science, you have emunah tefillah, which means foolishness or blind faith, where you just go off and do crazy things. And it's very similar to tefillah, meaning foolishness, is similar to tefillah.
Hold it up in a little bit. So tefillah, that means prayer.
Right. It's very interesting. Tefillah is prayer, but if you alter it just slightly, it's tefillah. Tefillah means foolishness.
So a different vowel, one vowel different, but it's still the same root.
Well, there's a yud in tefillah, but I think it might be the same root. But it's just possible that it's a homonym. You know, like in English, we have two words that are spelled the same, but they mean something different. Anyway, it's very interesting that if you take out reason, you're just left with blind faith. So this is a very interesting coincidence of words. So I'm going to share some of that as part of my explanation that we need in religion to use our rational mind. Otherwise, we're just going to go off and do crazy things. And history has shown that very often, that people who are religious but not rational, they're dangerous to themselves and others. So I'm going to point that out at the high holidays, in which we're going to talk about the high holidays. My theme is going to be unity, bringing everyone together, but different political parties, different branches of Judaism, bringing everybody together. But how do you do that? How do you bring all the different branches together? There's only one way to do it. The only way is, first of all, to use reason and logic and to discuss things and not just be partisan, just sit down rationally and discuss things. And the other thing is to put Jewish ideals above our particular beliefs. Love, charity, goodness, kindness, taking care of the planet. These things should be above all of our little local belief systems. So that's how we achieve, I'm going to talk about that. I'm also going to talk about the need for judgment on Judgment Day. You see, most people think that it's good to be non-judgmental. Oh, he's non-judgmental. Oh, she's such a great person. She doesn't judge anybody. Well, in Judaism, that's not a good thing. If you don't judge anybody or anything, that's the beginning of immorality. When good and evil are the same, when right and wrong is the same and there's no difference, that's what evil is. So we need to judge. And I'm going to talk about judgment. And the harshest judgment should be for ourselves. We should be tough on ourselves, because that's the way we can improve. If we judge other people, it's going to get kind of difficult to get them to come around to our way of thinking. But if we judge ourselves, then we can make a difference. But we do need to judge others. We need to judge other Jews, other political parties, other belief systems. If we don't, and we just say it's all good, whatever, you want to give a 17-year-old a semi-automatic weapon and send them across state lines and let them shoot up people who are protesting, that's so good. I'm not going to judge that. Who am I to judge? Well, Jews don't see it that way. We have to judge. And when we don't, very, very bad things happen. But when we do judge, we should do it rationally and with kindness and not from a position of arrogance. And so that's basically going to be talking. Those are my themes on the high holidays. And I'm glad now to open it up to others if you'd like to share some thoughts about that or anything else.
Before everybody shares, I want to tell about two programs, if I could. Next Tuesday night, the same slot as tonight, September 8th at 7 p.m., we're going to have a special program titled A Physician's Personal Account of the Israeli Yom Kippur War. It's a presentation by Yitzhak Brook, who's a doctor. He's a professor of pediatrics at Georgetown University School of Medicine in Washington, D.C. He was born and raised in Israel. He was in the Israeli army, and then he came over and he was in the U.S. Navy for many years, for 27 years. He has a video that he's going to be showing, a 40-minute video of that, and then he's going to open it up for a discussion with Q&A after. I think it'll be a very, very interesting program. Please share with your friends and neighbors and family about it, because we don't want like 9 people on that. It would be nice if we had a good house, a good showing for him. So that's
10
next Tuesday. On next Thursday, September 10th, we have Mindy Stone, who is a licensed clinical social worker, and she's going to present Navigating the New Normal, tips on coping and triumphing through COVID-19, and give us tips and ways that we can better adapt and better cope and be better, more resilient to loneliness, anxiety, and just everyday. Instead of thinking negatively about what we're doing right now, think positively and learn new things and turn it around, turn it around. Instead of depression, turn it upside down and make it a positive. So that's at 3 o'clock on Thursday, and we've got the 7 o'clock program. With that, I'll stop talking and open it up to, you can unmute yourselves. I muted you because I heard some
one
sound.
other thing I wanted to share on the high holidays. I don't know if you're aware of this, but I've been very friendly with Robert Watson for decades. In fact, when he ran for Congress, I was his political advisor, because I served in the state house and I knew a fair amount of politicians, some of whom I've sued. Anyway, he came to me and asked for advice when he ran for Congress, and I've stayed friendly with him ever since. So I asked him if he would show up at the services, and some thought that it would take a lot of money to do it. He wrote a very, very gracious letter, said he's always been a big fan of what we do and what happens at Va-Dor and my social actions. So he participated for free. He shot a video, kind of like where we're at right now as we approach the new year. Where have we been? Where are we? And where are we heading? Which is what he's really good at. So he's going to be sharing that with our folks, so you can hear that. The other thing I wanted to share is that I have a friend of mine, David Epstein. He's a friend of mine from the old days. He and I didn't get married till I was 44. So he and I were on the singles scene for years and years. He's still not married yet. So we were Jewish singles in Palm Beach County for years. And we would go to all the like Jewish singles things. And I don't hang out in bars, but we would hang out together, and we were good friends for a long time, and we still are. Anyway, he's in New York now, he's a doctor. So anyway, he's telling me about this guy that he revered when he was a kid. He was forced to go to yeshiva and all these Orthodox schools. His dad was an Orthodox rabbi, and he's always lamenting how messed up his childhood is and how he's still messed up from that experience. Anyway, there was one guy above all, towered above the rest, an Orthodox scholar who was really friendly and nice to everybody. He raved about the guy. So he says, and now I'm sitting in my room and I see a discussion between you and my good friend, Tzvi Kahn, Rabbi Tzvi Kahn, who I haven't seen in 10 years. And he's telling me what a great guy he was. And he said he really enjoyed the discussion. And that's the rabbi that I mixed it up with. And he knows me very well. So he says to me, and I want to thank you, Barry, for taking it easy on him. He says, I know what you're usually like, and for some reason you weren't like that. So I said, well, David, it's taken me about 20 years to find an Orthodox rabbi to dialogue with. So I figure I'm going to be on good behavior at least for a while before I lower the boom. He says, well, you did. You told him a few things that were pretty like devastating disposition, but you backed off. I said, yeah, I'm going to do that until I want to try to cultivate him. So it's a very interesting coincidence that. And he's going to touch base with his friend. Anyway, that's all I have to say. So what does everybody else want to share?
Nothing, honey.
Emily, you have some great news. Share your great news with everybody.
My great news is that I've been working so hard to with the group called Caregivers for Compromise, and we won. The governor, said that long-term care facilities can have visitation. In fact, the governor went a little further than we recommended. We had recommended one person with appointments made and PPEs and all that stuff, and the governor said no more than one person could visit. And he was actually very emotional at the presentation. So you know, I'm happy I'll be able to visit Jack and people. I knew this was going to happen because I think I just told you I got an email from a very large facility this morning that said, we welcome people to take tours of our facility now. And I knew if they were welcoming tours of the facility that they were going to have visitation. So, you know, advocacy works. You just have to.
Congratulations.
Thank you. You have to make those phone calls, you have to write those letters and keep pushing and pushing.
Good
And
for
you have
you,
to cause a
Emily.
little good trouble. That's
Yeah,
good.
you do. You have to cause a little good trouble. We worked for years to get Medicaid changed a little bit, and it didn't work very well under Scott, and it hasn't worked very well under DeSantis, you know, to get an expansion of Medicaid. But you got to keep working and, you know, not give up.
Congratulations.
That's my news.
That's great. Rabbi, that means you'll be able to visit Elaine.
Well, not necessarily, because the facility still has to approve it. The facility, even though he said you can do it, the facility could say no. So
The facility
Yeah,
can
because
say,
what Emily said, you have to make a
no,
point.
but the facility could overrule it and say, yeah, the governor says it's okay, but we don't. Sorry.
yeah,
So
the
it's
facility,
not automatic.
Wow.
hopefully the facility will be humane enough to allow this. It's difficult for a big facility because they have to arrange for an appointment and it has to be, you know,
Yeah.
would have to be outside.
Well, I'm not sure that I would go anyway. You know, I talked to my mom on the phone. I can even look at her if I want to, but and she can look at me. But I'm totally immunocompromised, and
Well,
my
right.
doctor told
right.
me you don't want to put yourself in a compromising situation because you won't live to talk about it. He was like,
That's right.
yeah, so I probably wouldn't go anyway. Oh, I did want to also mention, in the service I spoke about Chadwick Boseman, and
Yes.
I mentioned the fact that what he did with what he was going through was pretty amazing. I mean, if you look at him in that Black Panther movie, the guy is like seriously ripped,
Yeah.
and he was in really good shape, and he persevered with courage and strength, and so I gave a tribute to him. I also mentioned that I have the same affliction that he did, and going through some of the same stuff, so I can really understand and appreciate what he was able to accomplish during all that. Like, nobody even knew what was going on. Like, they said, oh, he just died of colon cancer, and everybody was like blown away because they never knew. So it's really extraordinary. So I offered a pretty heartfelt tribute to him also. And what I mentioned was, a lot of actors, they just take any role that comes along. You know, you give them a role and they're going to make some money, they do it. That's not what he was about, though. He chose characters that could help people or that were inspiring. And I said, we can do that too. We can choose what type of person we want to be or what type of character we're going to adopt. We can do that also. We don't have to just act any way that comes along. We can use deliberation. So I'd made a tribute to him. I think you'll enjoy it.
So
And I
is
actually
that-
watched Black Panther the other night, so now I know Wakanda forever.
There you go.
By the way, the Today Show had a tribute to Robin Williams this morning, who suffered from the same affliction that Jack has, and Jack had the same kind of a mind that was kind of tangential. His wife has started a program or whatever. But, you know, it's interesting to see that everybody in life goes through stuff, and you just have to get up and keep moving.
Yeah. All right, who else?
Go ahead. I'm done.
Nobody, huh? Nobody has anything? Questions for the rabbi? Anything?
But I
Valerie?
have a good thing to say to Joel, and I actually wrote to him. You ran the board meeting like a true chairperson. You know Robert's Rules of Order. You called the question at the appropriate time. You were businesslike, and Joel, you did a good job.
I will second that. I've been to a lot of board meetings. That one was really good. You ran a great meeting. Not just businesslike though. Not just you were businesslike, but you also had discretion and wisdom and how to run it and who to how to move things along. And also you volunteered to help with the move, which is of a tremendous benefit.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah,
don't know when to shut up.
I agree.
I thank you very much. It was just, I needed the practice. That was probably my 500th or more board meeting that I've run in all different situations. This was one of the easy ones, Barry. You were kind.
Yeah,
I don't know what kind, but we're kind.
Yeah, that was good. And I think that's a good harbinger for the future. That's good. All right, go ahead, Sharon.
You mentioned that you're going to give a little words about Chadwick. Is that for this Friday night, or is that for?
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's this Friday.
Oh, for this Friday. Okay.
I might even do a podcast. I might do a podcast like to introduce the service, so get people interested a little bit.
The podcast. I don't have a clue.
Yeah, I'm moving up in the world. I even know the difference between a podcast and and a Zoom.
Well, that I know, but I mean, between a YouTube and a podcast.
No, a podcast and a live stream. I know the difference between podcast and live stream because I attended the program that you had, Sharon. A podcast is taped in advance, and live stream is going on live. So I know the difference now. I don't know how to do either one, but I know the difference.
Valerie has something to say, so we'll let her.
Yeah, two things. Number one, Rabbi, I did put out a notice at Bellagio today to the president of Jewish Heritage to let him know about the virtual Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur service.
Great.
So,
thank you.
Oh, thank you, Valerie.
I don't know if you're aware, Sharei Shalom is also doing a virtual.
Yeah, but they're charging.
Yeah,
by reservations only.
Right. So I'm just letting you know I did that. Also, there was a very interesting discussion that many of us have had. Talk about Zooms. I'm the Zoom queen. I have a 500-place Zoom. I think Sharon is aware of that. And we Zoom live shows and lectures all the time. And there was a very interesting point that was brought up, and it's, in my opinion, it's quite valid with regard to these sports teams boycotting or walking off the field. Now, while we're all very aware of the situation and we all know that changes have to be made, we're not ignorant to that fact. But there's another side to that coin. There are hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of fans who have been really holed up in their homes. There are kids that have been holed up in their homes that are diehard fans of these teams. And they really, really look forward to these games as a release, emotionally, physically, mentally. And when these teams have planned games like, for example, the NBA, who've taken such precaution, and walk off and don't do these things, they are really, in my opinion, and many other people's opinions, really negatively impacting the thousands and hundreds of thousands of people that under normal circumstances support their teams and buy tickets. And right now, I think emotionally, it's really important for some of these teams to realize that those fans at this time, in the place that we are right now, desperately really need these outlets. And maybe there's another way that they can show their solidarity by maybe taking their salaries or part of their salaries and maybe rebuilding some communities or funding college educations for some of these kids who are really negatively impacted or now orphaned by some of this gratuitous violence that's going on. There are other ways to show your anxiety and how you feel and by not negatively impacting hundreds and thousands of other people that really are looking forward to what it is that you do. I mean, and that was a very valid point that I thought really needed to be voiced.
It is a valid point. Let me just share from my perspective. My son Brandon is a basketball fanatic. So when you say, these kids they look forward to it, he watches games like whenever they're on. He's watching all the time. He knows all the players, who does what. He loves watching basketball. But when the players went on strike, I asked him what he thought. He said, okay, so I wait a couple of days and I'll see it then. He thought, he's not an activist like Ari is. Ari's a real activist. Brandon's not. He's kind of lackadaisical about it. But he thought, okay, I think I hear what they're saying. I think because he's heard me say so many times what I thought. But the way I see it is this. You're right. The fans were inconvenienced. That's why they did it. They wanted them to be inconvenienced because they thought, they're going to be inconvenienced. They're going to have to wait a couple of days to see a game. But I guess the guy was kind of inconvenienced too when he had 7 bullets shot into him, or when the guys couldn't breathe and they died. They were a little inconvenienced too, and so are black people when they're afraid to go out of their house and deal with the police. So let's let other people feel a tiny, tiny bit of inconvenience so they can relate to it, rather than, you know, if they write a check, that's always good, but they specifically wanted people to be inconvenienced somewhat so they could. It's kind of like when you fast on Yom Kippur.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make yourself feel a little bit of pain so you can kind of relate to the pain of other people. So
Well, I think in the overall scheme of things, though, inconvenience is really not it. You have people for the past 4 or 5 months that are really going through a lot. And I think a bigger statement could be made if, well, why don't we put money towards rebuilding some of these communities that were burned down with gratuitous violence, and their own neighborhoods and their own kids and their own college kids and their own people can't make a living because these places were burned down. Let's try to build something up. Let's take $100,000 this week that half the teams are making and maybe put it towards these neighborhoods and do a neighborhood rebuild and sponsor it by the NBA. I mean, there's a lot more positive, in my opinion, and many other people, a lot of more positive things that can be done because these people have such a tremendous voice and are so highly visible. They can lead those kinds of actions and they can lead those kinds of movements. And I think in many instances, that would be a hell of a lot more beneficial and show a hell of a lot more guts and show a lot more solidarity with the communities and the people that are suffering because of this gratuitous violence, because there are a lot of them out there, and they can make a stand and they can make a statement by doing that.
I agree with you there. And a lot of players are doing that. A lot of players are already right now, like LeBron James and others, they're doing exactly what you're saying.
Yes, but those are those individual, I'm talking about the NBA or the MLS. I mean, these organizations can really step up to the plate. And I think the players can push that if they really wanted to. I mean, they have a lot of power that they throw around sometimes, and it could be used, in my opinion, in a lot more positive way than walking off. Because I know in the Bellagio alone, I have 2,000 people that are literally losing their minds at this point. You can magnify that by all the kids and all the people that were really looking forward to this season. And I think it's just more than an inconvenience. I really think it has an emotional impact at this stage. I
agree with you that NBA could do it, but it was only delayed a couple of days.
It's irrelevant. That's not the point. They could have done, in my opinion, and many others, they could have done something a lot more positive.
Really. Valerie, I think you're right. I think individual players, LeBron has started a school, you know, he's done individually. I think you've hit the nail on the head that it really should be the owners that come together and let some of their profits go to sponsor these things as a group. It would have a big impact. The individual players do things, you know, the ones from the Glades are out there, you know, doing things, but the owners have not come to the place where they want to give up their profits.
Well, that's why I'm saying the players have a lot more power and can force things like that. And it's not just sports, you know, you got the wrestling, I mean, you got WWE, you got the NBA, you got the MLS, you got the baseball, you've got hockey, you've got all these teams that make hundreds and hundreds of billions, not millions, billions of dollars over the years that they can turn around and the players can force that. I mean, I think that would have been a much more use for their time than walking.
I agree with you there. But the players also are trying to push for the stadiums, the basketball stadiums, to be used as polling centers and voting centers, which is a really good thing to do. They're encouraging people to go out and vote. And they're trying to mobilize the black vote, and I think that's a really good thing. But I agree with you, Valerie. That would be a good thing also. I kind of like the other thing as well. I'm a protester from way back. I like those kind of things. But I'll tell you one thing that, and I think we should recommend that. Your suggestion is good. But one thing that I want to mention also is this Black Lives Matter business is it's really a problem. Because Black Lives Matter means two different things. One, there's an actual organization called Black Lives Matter. They have a charter, they have leaders, they have different people who are different groups. And then there's also a movement, Black Lives Matter, that has nothing to do with the organization or anything, just people who use the slogan Black Lives Matter. The organization is a problem. the organization from the early days is a serious problem. It has anti-Semitic overtones. Some of the groups still are anti-Semitic. They have violent overtones. Some of them recommend violence towards police. They encourage violence. And when they took the movement in the beginning, violence followed them. And their rhetoric is violent, and they didn't do anything to really curb it. And the Democratic Party just latched onto it and was co-opted by it. And so they got associated now with violence and mayhem, and even with anti-Semitism. Synagogues were defaced. This is not a good thing. When I talked about judgment, we need the judge. Okay, the slogan, the movement, it's good. The organization, we need the judge and say, no, violence isn't good. Now, Biden did that belatedly after he got hammered for being silent about it for too long. But he did it. But I think we need to judge this movement and let people know that a movement that's based in any way on anti-Semitism and violence it's not a good thing. We need to speak up about that.
Barry, I differ with you a little bit. This is not a black situation. This is a white on white situation. There's a white power militias, and they're out there like crazy, especially out in Idaho and elsewhere. I happen to know for a fact. Then there's the white groups that are not white power. And they're battling each other. That's what happened in Portland. I know Portland real well. My kids live right across the river. I spent time out there. Portland is a very liberal town. It's a throwback, actually, to the 50s. You go to area, they've got book stores with playing the music and the bookstores and all that, coffee shops. It's a neat place. A lot of education, a lot of colleges. Idaho is loaded with militias. That's right not far away. That's a couple hours away by car. This came out of Idaho, and Clackamas County is south of Portland. It's near the wine country in Oregon. Those people, if they'd been watching the basketball games like they should be and everything else, they wouldn't be in their pickup truck shooting paintballs. But they did. They went out in a convoy and they broke up a peaceful demonstration that was mostly white. There's only 7% black people in Portland. That demonstration was mostly white. This is a problem across the country, and this is the biggest problem we have. And because we have a president that condones it and has gone out and said positive things about it, I don't want to get political, but the truth is the truth.
You just did.
But the truth is the truth, and I'm speaking the truth. He condoned it.
No, he didn't condone it. He did not condone it.
Well,
you know, what do you, I don't know.
What did he say about the young 17-year-old?
I'm listening to the candidates.
The young 17-year-old.
Joe Biden can't put two words together without fumbling all over himself.
Okay,
He's not running for president.
I'm not going to get into
the Democratic Party.
I don't want to get into this with you right now.
You just did.
We will not survive 4 years of this mayhem. You want the Russians walking down Main Street?
Oh, please.
Okay.
Oh, please. Come on.
Well, I'm glad that we had this discussion because this demonstrates what I'm going to be talking about on the high holidays.
Look, there's some truth to there's truth to all parts of this. There's problems on both sides. Nobody is denying that. That's the truth. There's problems on both sides.
There are people who are denying it. There's people in powerful places who are absolutely denying it. There's people in high places who are blaming one party and one group, and then the other side blames the other party. This is what I'm going to talk about at the high holidays. It is not helpful to do that. It is not helpful for one side to say the other side is vile and they're pure. And then the other side says, no, we're pure and you're vile. I agree with what you're saying, Valerie. There's
big problems on both sides.
There's a lot more fault on one side than the other, but there's fault on both sides. But my point is that the people who are progressive, the liberals, they need to criticize their own party and their own group. Now, for instance, what you said, Joel, is 100% true. These white supremacist thugs, these guys are dangerous.
Yes.
And the president has nothing to say other than right on. You know, I'm more power to you. Take your AK-47. You could be a 17-year-old and go out and shoot up people. But the other side, if you don't recognize the fact that within the black movement, they can go two ways. They can go the Martin Luther King way or the Farrakhan way. And a lot of them, especially in the beginning, were going the Farrakhan way of hate, especially towards Jews. Now, for instance, I represented Corey Jones and his family. He was a black youth shot in Boynton, and his grandfather was a pastor, black pastor, and I worked with them. And as soon as it happened, we went to the community. We said, no violence, protest, but no violence. And I said to him, I will work with your family, but not if you work with Black Lives Matter. Why did I say that? Because as an activist, I've been at protests where Black Lives Matter shows up and they start spewing anti-Semitism and violent stuff that is really distasteful to me. So I said that to him, and he said, you're right. We don't want him either. This is a black pastor who knows Black Lives Matter, says, we don't want him either. We want peace. We don't want conflict. And he and I worked together, and there was no, if you notice, in Palm Beach County, after Corey Jones was shot, just like in the other places, he was shot dead by a white officer. There was no violence at all. It was just discussion and peace. And the same thing in Boca. I was at a rally in Boca led by black activists. They invited me. I said, I'll be there if you don't have Black Lives Matter. They said, we don't want them either. We're not interested in having them. And Boca had very, very peaceful rallies. But where Black Lives Matter goes, violence ensues almost all the time. We need to not just point the finger at the other side. We need to look at our own beliefs and our own selves. And that I think that's what we need to do to bring the country together.
There's absolutely problems. And I said this a couple of weeks ago when I got really, really hot under the collar, because a lot of these problems have been manifesting themselves over a long period of time. And I said it, and I think a few of you heard me. This is a 30 and 40-year manifestation. I think we, the people, in many instances, have been asleep at the wheel. The parties did not go off on these tangents yesterday. This has been a situation that we have not been listening to the people like Syed that's coming up, and people like the younger people that are coming up. We haven't been listening to the people that are running for office in the lower echelon. The last week and a half, they were the local elections. Very, very poor turnout. But these are the people that in the next 5, 10, 15 years are going to be our leaders. What are they thinking? Are we putting them in office? Are we giving them power now for the next 10 to 15 years? So if we go back 20, 25, 30, 40 years, these are problems that have been manifesting themselves that we, the people, have kept electing. Some of the people have been in power, like a Biden, and not that I have anything against him, it's just an example. We never were supposed to have professional politicians. We were always supposed to have citizen politicians. Our founding fathers never intended for our politicians to be in there for a lifetime to make a living, because they lose touch with the people. And we in general have been voting for people that we're not listening to what they're saying before we elect them. We're not paying attention. As a result, problems have compiled and compounded. And now we have a situation that we have a crisis on our hands. And in many instances, we have to look to ourselves, because we were, as a people, were asleep at the wheel. We have put people in power that did this.
But what we see now is that you don't have to have been in power for a lifetime to cause a lot of havoc. But what we're going to do, what we do at Va-Dor is what you're talking about, Valerie. We agree. People should know what's going on. Politicians should be able to speak, be heard. We should educate the public and give an opportunity for both sides to be heard. And that's what we're doing. I agree with you completely. People don't know what's going on. They're ignorant about the candidates. But we're trying to do what we can to offset that. And I appreciate having people in Va-Dor on every side of the political spectrum. That's a really good thing. It helps us. Yeah, Emily.
Just to add to this, our political system needs to be totally revamped. There's a book by a man named Sanchez called The Oligarchy of the Wealthy. And that book talks about how, and you know, Barry, because you ran, how much money it takes to run for office. I see politicians listing how much money they've raised rather than what they stand for.
I don't know why you complain, Emily. We have the best government that money can buy.
Exactly.
And you're complaining about it.
Exactly.
You're right. That's the whole problem with the system. It's the whole problem.
Absolutely.
Well, a lot of this came several years ago when our judicial system allowed Citizens United. When they
Yes.
allowed that to Citizens United, that was unfettered dark money, which means anybody from any country, from any place, can pour money into somebody's candidacy, and we don't know where the money is coming from. Hence the
Right.
situation that we have now with quote unquote other countries influencing our elections. I mean, this is what I'm talking about. We have been asleep at the wheel for a very long time to have people in office that appoint these officials, that appoint these judges, that appoint our Supreme Court, that allow these kinds of things to happen. I mean, this is where I'm saying, Barry, we, the people, have been asleep at the wheel. We have allowed this to happen. And
Well,
it's
the other big problem is that the political parties become a cabal where they're just protecting their own interests. So if somebody in their party is doing something that's patently illegal, they'll just let it all go. They don't care. It's just, okay, I want power, so they just let it all go. And the Citizens United case is very interesting because it said that donating money, monetary contributions are a form of speech. So, I mean, I've heard the expression money talks, but they took it a little too far. What they're saying is that money talks, it's speech, and that's bad. But I agree with you, Valerie, that the thing that we need to do to clean up our system is for the political parties not to just support whatever somebody else in the party is doing, but to be honest. And you're seeing that happen in this election to some extent. There's some people within the parties, Republicans who are not putting up with what's going on anymore, and some Democrats who are speaking out. That's what we need. We need people with integrity who are going to challenge the system and cause some good trouble. Well, I think we've had a good discussion, everybody. We managed to talk about politics without getting really angry at each other. So we're doing well. We're gonna keep doing that. We're gonna keep speaking out about issues and trying to get everybody to be heard. So I appreciate everybody joining in the discussion.